Hello everyone, welcome back to another sewing tutorial on this channel. This is Jowins Fashion Ville. If you're stopping here for the first time, you're welcome. In today's video, guys, we'll be learning how to make a funnel corset. If this is what you're interested in learning, please watch the video to the end. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe. So guys, let's get right into the tutorial. Okay guys, the neck width I'll be working with is 4.5, and then the neck depth 3.75. I'll take it again. The neck width 4.5, the neck depth 3.75. For the lines I've drawn, I have my chest line, the bust, the under bust and the hemline. So guys, if you observe on the pattern, you clearly notice that it's an extended shoulder sleeve. So I'll be extending the sleeve by 1.5, depends on what you want. This is not a standard, so I used 1.5 for my extended sleeve, and then I'll go ahead and link it into my armhole, as you can see. So it's linked rather into the midpoint of the armhole. So I'll go ahead and place my half bust band, which is half your bust to bust. If your bust to bust is 8, you mark 4. If your bust to bust is 7, you mark 3.5. If it's 9, you mark 4.5. So I'll place it there and link it down to the hemline. For the underbust contouring, I'll be marking 1 inch on both sides, and then on the hemline, I'll be marking half an inch on both sides. Just narrow it down like you're trying to create a basic body's waist dart. Okay, so I'll just simply do that. Okay, and then contour it. Use the curvy part of my pattern master and then contour it to my bust point, as you can see me doing. The next thing we'll simply do, guys, is to to do our overbust contouring. For the overbust contouring, I'll be coming down by 7 inches. This is not a standard. If you want your overbust to clearly cover your bust, 7 inches is fine. If you want a little exposure of the cleavage, you can do 8 or 8.5 inches. 7 inches is completely over your bust, just know this. So for the overbust contouring, I'll be marking 0.75 on both sides. I'll go ahead and use the curvy part of my pattern master and then contour it to the bust point, just like I did for the underbust contouring. For the sweetheart neckline, guys, I'm going to be coming down by 9 inches, placing my meter rule from the shoulder line. I came down by 9 inches, and then I drafted a curve, a sweetheart curve. Okay, you can do a boat curve or a sweetheart curve, and then I'll be linking the other part of the dart leg into the armhole, as you can see me doing. So guys, this is very easy to achieve. The next thing I'll do is to place a horizontal measurement, which is quarter of your bust. I marked the quarter of my bust on the chest line and on the bust line. For the under bust, the quarter of your under bust, your dart intake, and then your seam allowance. Okay, I did worked with a seam allowance of 2 inches, and then I simply went ahead to place my waistline. It was an oversight from the beginning, so I placed my waistline. My waistline is 18 inches, and then I'll go ahead and place the quarter of my waist plus the dart intake and the seam allowance of 2 inches. So guys, I also forgot to mention that the total measurement from the shoulder down to the hemline is 27 inches, because we're going to be working with the bust dart. Okay, so have this at the back of your mind that the total length for the front pattern is 27 inches. So the next thing I'll do is also place my hip measurement, which is a quarter of my hip plus the dart intake, and then my seam allowance of 2 inches. You can do an extended whatever hip and then link it to the waist if you so wish, but I just simply took my actual measurements for this pattern, and then I went ahead to link up the points, as you can see me doing. So the next thing I'll simply do, guys, is to place my bust dart. Before I do this, I'm going to be placing my keyhole. The keyhole, if you notice that on the pattern or on the thumbnail, there's an opening around the center bust. Okay, so you can just place your pattern in any using the curved. You can use the curviest part or the slightly curvy part, depending on the exposure that you want, and then go ahead and draft that keyhole on the yoke. There's a keyhole on the yoke. So guys, for the bust that I came down by 1.5 inches, which is the difference between your front waist and then your back waist. Okay, so what I simply did next is to cut out the excess pattern paper on the pattern to enable me cut out my yoke. Okay, so I'm just cutting out the yoke gently. I'll cut this out, and then I also cut out the excess pattern on the yoke. So this is the yoke. I've indicated it on the pattern. Okay, so this is what we have. I'm not sure that this particular place I'm marking is exactly where it's meant to be. I feel that it should be a little bit inwards, but I can just feel it. I know where it's meant to be. So the next thing I'll simply do is to close up my bust dart. To do this, you open up your bust dart, and then you go ahead to open up your shoulder dart, the one above there. You go ahead and open. You can either open up your over bust dart or you can open up your waist dart, depending on the style you're drafting. For this tutorial, I feel that the overbust dart is best for me to open up because we're not yet done with the tutorial. Okay, so I've closed up the darts, and then I'll go ahead and retrace. Okay, so for the curve was seen on the pattern. It was an overside. That curve is not meant to be there. The curve is meant to be on the over bust, on the bust line. It's supposed to be below the bust line. So kindly ignore the bust, the curve you're seeing on that under bust. I'm going to be redrafting that curve again, and that is why I'm using my pencil so that we don't have much markings. So on the bust line, I came down by 1 inch, and then I'll go ahead and curve it to the armhole. So this curve is more like demarcating, creating two bustiers in one. Okay, so this curve, from this curve below is a bustier on its own, and then from the overbust down to the hemline is a bustier on its own. So we are having two bustiers. So, but I'll be labeling, giving them different names. So I went ahead to retrace the overbust bustier, which is the bustier from the overbust down to the hemline, on a different pattern paper, excluding the line that I drew on below the bust line. Okay, like I mentioned earlier, it's like having two bustiers in one. So I went ahead, I used my marker to draft it on the paper, and then I used my tracing wheel to trace out the lines that I needed. I noted earlier that you're going to exclude the curve. Excluding the curve, every other thing comes into play. Draft the lines. As you can see me, I'm using my tracing wheel. So these are the lines that I drafted. Remember that I mentioned that excluding the line or the curve underneath the bust, every other thing comes into the second paper, more like you're drafting two bustiers in one. So this is the first, this is the major, the overbust bustier, and then we have the one, the bustier from the from the bust, below the bust. So I'll go ahead and cut it out, and also remove the darting tick, and then I'll label it as you can see me doing right here. So guys, at this point it's very important that you actually do labeling so that you don't get things so mixed up. If you notice that I labeled the center front and the side front, and I'm also going to indicate this as my bustier. I'm going to label this as my bustier, which is indicating the bustier, the complete bustier from the overbust. I'm going to indicate it as the bustier, the center front bustier, the center front, the side front bustier. So for this is the second bustier, I'm going to be labeling this the corset, the corset bustier. Okay, please don't mind my use of word. I'm just trying to ensure that my labeling suits what I want to do, suits the description. Okay, so I'll be tagging this as a corset. This is a bustier, but I'm using the word corset for it. So this is the corset, and this is the center front, and then this is the corset side front. This is the bustier side front, and then this is the bustier center front. So this is it for the front pattern. We'll simply proceed for the back pattern. Okay guys, for the back pattern, the measurement is 25.5. Remember I mentioned that the full length for the front pattern is 27. So we close the bust that means for the back we'll be eliminating we'll be removing the 1.5 inches, which is the bust that measurement. So we have a total measurement of 25.5. Then the neck measurement remains the same, which is 4.5 by 3.7. I'll go ahead and place my extended shoulder. Whatever you do for the front, you do for the back. The extended shoulder of 1.5 inches, and then I'm going to be linking it to the armhole, which is the midpoint of the armhole. You go ahead and label your lines, the chest, the waist, and then the hem. What I'll simply do next guys is to eliminate the zipper bulge. To do this, on the waistline you go in by 1/2 inch, and then you link it up to your neckline, and also link it down to your hemline, guys. And on the same waistline, I'll also be marking 1.5, which is my zipper allowance. If it's 2, you mark 2, but we're working on 1.5. I'll go ahead and link it up, or you just go ahead and use your measuring tape and keep marking 1.5 till you get to your neck measurement. Okay, do the same upwards and do the same downwards. Okay, or you can just draft it the way I did it to make it easier for you. The next thing I'll simply do is to draft my keyhole. I went in a little bit inward. I think the mark there was about 6 inches, and then I drafted it. So the yoke for the back, it's having an opening, okay, a keyhole opening. You can make it wider than this depending on the kind of exposure you want at the back. Okay, some people take it a bit upwards. So what I'll simply do next is to place my simple waist dart for the back. We're not snatching anything. We'll just go ahead and place your waist dart, link it down to the hemline. So guys, the next thing we'll simply do is to place or mark rather the horizontal measurement, which is the quarter of your bust circumference. Your bust circumference divided by 4, you place it on the chest. Your quarter of your waist divided by 4, you place it plus your dart intake and seam allowance. Same thing for your hip. You can do an extended hip just like I mentioned for the front pattern, but we don't have that for this tutorial. So what we simply do next is to cut out the excess pattern paper. I just simply removed the zipper bulge excess that we have there. I'll go ahead and cut out the yoke and also draft the keyhole, cut out the excess on the neckline and then on the shoulder. Okay, so this is it for the yoke, and then I'll also go ahead and remove the zipper allowance. Will not be having the zip will not be extending to the yoke. For the yoke, I'll be using a loop and then a bottom. Okay, so the zip stops on the chest line. Okay, so this is the side back and then the center back. So guys, what we'll simply do is to use the pattern paper to cut on our fabric. We have the lemon Mikado fabric and then the Ankara fabric. A whole lot of people use different things for the corset pattern. They can use your normal the normal crepe. Some use a lot of things. Some use satin, some use the what they call the other type of fabric. So it depends on your choice, depends on what you want to use. So for this particular tutorial, I'm making use of the Mikado fabric on the Ankara for the front and then Ankara for the back. So right here I'm infusing the interfacing on the Ankara fabric to stabilize the fabric. Okay, but for the other fabric is stable enough, the Mikado fabric is stable enough. I'm not fusing an interfacing so that it doesn't look too stiff. It's stiff already, it's stable already, so I won't be fusing any interfacing on it. So this is me right here also fusing the wording with my steam iron. Okay, I'm fusing it. I'm sorry I cut the wording off camera. Okay, I have some tutorials where I also showed or displayed how we can also cut the wording on the fabric. It's not a difficult thing to achieve. You can check out my Queen Anne's neckline. I think I also placed that. I also included that in the tutorial. Okay, so this is it. I went ahead to also join it. Okay, after fusing the wording, I joined it, and then this is the back pattern cut out with the back pattern. The main fabric is the Ankara fabric, the lining is the Ankara fabric. So I went ahead to use to close the to I went ahead to stitch the waist darts on the back pattern. So I've already stitched the waist darts off camera. We all know how to close up our waist darts, which we drafted on the pattern. Just snatch it by half an inch and then stitch it up and stitch it down. So right here, what I'm trying to do is to draft the pattern for the hem. Remember that it's an asymmetric hem. The hem is not a uniform straight line, it's an asymmetric. So from the edge, I went in by 6 inches. Okay, this is not a standard. Just go ahead and be creative at this point. And then I curved it upwards. Okay, so the measurement from that point, from the center front, from the side front, the extreme side front to this point inwards is 6 inches, and then I curved it upwards. And then the midpoint there, from the midpoint of the center line, that is the center front, the midpoint, I went inwards by around, I think, 5 inches, and then I curved. So at this point, just try and figure out a particular measurement that suits your creative style. Okay, so I just discovered something for myself, which is 6 inches from the extreme side going inwards, 6 inches, and from the center front inwards I went up inwards by half an inch, and then I did my curving. Okay, so it's also very important that you mark out your center front, because it will help the lines to be very uniform. Okay, you can use your bust to bust line to determine your center front. Just get the measurement distance between your half bust span and then get your midpoint there. Okay, so I'll go ahead and use my scissors and cut this out. Remember that I mentioned that I first of all determined my midpoint from my half bust span, which is my bustier line, the midpoint from one bustier line to the other bustier line. Determine your mid, go inwards and mark, and then from the side you curve so that you can get a uniform curve. So this is me using my scissors to curve. I placed it on the what they call it, on the lining, and then I'm cutting out. Remember that the Ankara has its lining, main fabric and lining. The Mikado has a main fabric and a lining. Okay, so for each pattern there's a main fabric and there's a lining. So I'll simply do this for all the patterns that I drafted. For the front pattern, the second bustier pattern, this is the second bustier, which is the corset, the one tagged corset. I'll be using the pattern to also cut it out on the main and on the lining. I also do the same for the back pattern as well. So just do it one step at a time. So I'm done drafting the pattern, the hem pattern, for all the what they call it, for all the fabrics that I'll be using. I've drafted on the bustier, the overbust bustier, the half bustier, and then the back pattern. So what I'll simply do here is to draft my boning lines. I'll be making use of my bustier line, which is my major line, and then the center line. For this particular one, I cut it on fold. This Mikado fabric, I cut it on fold. I did not cut it with the center front closed. I opened up the center front and joined it. So from this part, I'll be marking 3 inches. From the bustier line, I'll be marking 3 inches. So this is 3 inches and this is another 3 inches. The distance between each line is 3 inches. I also apply the same thing for the other side. From the bustier line, I'll mark 3 inches and extend it again by another 3 inches, and then I'll draw a straight line. Ensure that you don't go into your seam allowance. So depending on your body size or your body measurement, you can do 2 inches interval or you can do 2.5 inches interval. So my boning lines are well established. So this is my regular bone, and this is my strip of fabric, which is about 1.75, between 1.5 to 1.75. I placed it on fold. I wrapped my regular bone in it, placed it on fold. So I have a seam allowance of about 0.25. I'm going to pin it down. If I'm working directly with my sewing machine, I won't be pinning it down, but for the sake of explanation for this tutorial, I'm going to pin it down so that you know that there's a seam allowance of about 0.25. So you stitch on the seam allowance and flip it, and then you secure it on the other side. Okay, so I'll be doing this for all the lines. This is just an example for us to know how the bonings will be placed. Okay, so I'm done placing all the bonings, and I went ahead to place one regilene bone on the neckline of this corset to give it this curve. Okay, so this is the lining. I'll go ahead and place it this way. Ensure I'll be placing the wrong side against the wrong side. Okay, so that we have the right side on the opposite way. I'm going to be securing my pin, take it to my sewing machine and stitch on the sides. Just join it together. Okay, join the two of them together. Just stitch it probably by 0.25, because we're going to be using a bias to actually conceal the raw edges. So this is a bias fold. This bias fold, I think, is about 5 inches or thereabout, either 5 or 4 inches. So I created this bias fold. You can see that it's quite a bit wide. It's not like the normal small bias. I made it a bit wide. So, and I went ahead to use my bias to close up the neckline. You can see the overbust area. I just closed it up, and then I just stop stitched the other part. Okay, so my bias fold is just on the overbust area, on the neckline area. Let me use the word neckline area. So this is the bustier. I've joined the panels of the bustier like I mentioned earlier. So I'll go ahead and draft my lines for bust caging. Okay, so we'll be doing a bust caging here. Some people overlook, depends on what you want. You can either use a stable wording, a very stable wording to achieve this, or you can use a bust caging method for this. But mostly, bust caging method gives it that firmness. Okay, so I'll go ahead and draft my lines for my bust caging. I have a tutorial on how to do a bust, how to achieve this bust caging method. So I'm going to be really quick here. So this is the lines I've drafted for the bust caging. I'm not going to be doing so much, placing so much. It's just a simple method, just simple. The caging, the regular bones are not much. You can go ahead and put more regular bone for yours, but this one gave me the firmness that I want, so I'm okay, which is over, below, and then ensure that you place your regular bone on the bustier line. Okay, it gives it that firmness around the bust. So I'm going to infuse my stay, my gum stay on the bust caging. So I'm make use of fiber, but I don't have that available, so I had to make with use of what I have in my shelf. So I have this gum stay, medium gum stay, and then I went ahead to use it to cover up the caging. So this is what we have. You can see the way it's looking already. Okay guys, so we'll simply move over to the yoke. For the yoke, I didn't cut any lining for the yoke. It's just a piece of fabric that will be concealing with a bias fold. For the bias fold, I created this bias fold with about 2 inches of Mikado fabric placed on fold with my steam iron. So I'll be using it to conceal the armhole area, the neckline area, and the keyhole. So I'll take this off camera, and then I'll just attach my bias to the yoke. So this is it. I'm done attaching the bias to the yoke, like I mentioned, the neckline, the keyhole, and then the armhole. So I went ahead and placed this yoke, which is this lace fabric, on the lining, okay, on the Ankara fabric. Okay, so I place it on the Ankara fabric. This is not the lining, this is the main fabric, while the other side that has the bust caging is the lining. So I went ahead and placed it there, and then I secured it with my pin. So I'll take it to my sewing machine and stitch it by 0.25 first, and then before placing it on the lining that has the bust caging. Remember that the bust caging came down by 1/2 inch. The caging didn't get up to the neckline. We left a seam allowance of 1/2 inch to enable us to attach our yoke. So I'm then going to be stitching it by 1/2 inch. Ensure that you notch. Make sure that you notch so that it relaxes very well, or you can use a hemming gum to sew so that by the time you flip it and iron it, the neckline will be so relaxed. But initially, what I usually do is to attach my yoke first, stitch it by 0.25 before placing it on the lining, attaching it, and doing my proper closure. So I'm done with it, and this is the outcome. I've notched it, and then the neckline is lying down properly. So the next thing I'll simply do, guys, is to attach my corset bustier to the main fabric of the overbust bustier. Okay, so I'm not including the lining, I'm just separating it, attaching it to the main fabric, which is the out in front, the fabric in front, not the fabric at the back. So you can see that I separated the one at the back, which is the lining, and I'm just attaching it to the front one, which is the main fabric. Okay, so I'm going to flip it open. After doing that, I'll place it this way using the lining to turn it up. Okay, I hope you understand, guys. I'm trying to ensure that I simplify this tutorial in such a way that a layperson can, or a beginner can understand. So I'll go ahead and stitch it by the side. I'm using the lining to turn it up. So I'll take it to the sewing machine and then turn it up. I'm going to be showing you guys the outcome much later. Okay, so this is the back. I mentioned earlier that I've placed my waist dart. I've taken it to the sewing machine. I placed my waist dart. So what I simply did, again, another modification I did on the back is also place a boning. So I placed a boning strip, just like I did for the corset bustier, a few inches away from the zipper. So guys, the importance or the relevance of this boning cannot be overemphasized. Please try and ensure that you do this if you're actually going to use a zipper for this tutorial. If you place this boning, there's this firmness or rigidity it gives it at the back. You feel so secured, you feel so gripped guys, other than placing just your zipper, please just place a single bone. If you have more regilling bone, you can place like 2 on each panel. Okay, but I just have just few left, so I placed one and I placed it closer to the zipper. So for the yoke, I made these loops. I created these loops that I'll be placing on each point. Just few distance, just place your loop, and I'll be using this bias to turn the loop. I don't know if you guys have an idea on how this is done. I'm going to do a comprehensive tutorial on this. I'm just trying to ensure that the tutorial is not too long. So place your loop and use a bias to turn it. When you place it, guys, I'll use my pin. I'm going to cut this loop into bits, okay, so that this explanation will be a bit detailed to the best of my understanding. So after cutting it in bits, I'm going to be placing it on each point, just few distance. You can mark maybe 1 inch or 1.5, depending on the number of loops you created. I'll secure it with my pin, or you take it to your sewing machine and you stitch it up. Just stitch it, tack it to your yoke. After stitching it up, you go ahead and use your bias. I'm going to be showing you guys how I used my bias to turn it. Okay, so guys, I'm done securing it. I'm using my pins to do this explanation. So after securing it, I'm going to replace opening up the bias, use 1/2 inch, sew it, and then flip it to the wrong side. So you're placing it on the right side against the wrong side. By doing this, you position the loops in the way that it should be. Okay, so for the armhole and the neckline, just like I did, I concealed with my bias. I told you that I created this bias with about 2 inch of the Mikado fabric. So I'm going to be placing this yoke on the back, the main fabric, and then I'll be using the lining to turn it up. So place it right sides facing each other. Ensure that your hemline patterns are really matching, and then go ahead and use the lining to turn it up. Okay, so this is the outcome of the back. It's not difficult to achieve, guys. The hemline is still open. Remember that I turned it up with the hemline, and I've also placed my zipper. I told you earlier during the drafting of the pattern that the zipper wouldn't get to the yoke. It would just simply stop at the armhole while I use my loops and button for the yoke. So this is the outcome. I'm just trying to show you guys what the back side looks like. The finishing is just good. I think I'm just comfortable with what I've done so far. So I went ahead to use my bias fold to conceal the hem. This is the hem of the back pattern. I use my bias fold to conceal the hem. The bias fold is, I think, 3 inches, like I mentioned earlier. 3 inches bias fold. I conceal the hemline. I'm also going to be concealing the hemline for the front pattern as well. So when I'm done with the back, I'll show you guys how I concealed the front pattern. So guys, this is the back, and then this is the front pattern. This is what we have. The next thing I'll do is to join the shoulders, join it by 1/2 inch. So you first of all secure it with your pins, ensure that they are matching. Okay, so you secure it with your pins, and then you stitch, and then don't forget to top stitch. When you top stitch, you get to relax the shoulder. You won't see the shoulder seam sticking out, so ensure that you stop stitch and then trim out the excess on the shoulder seam. Okay, so I'll take it to my sewing machine and then I'll join it. Then I'll also go ahead and place it right sides facing each other. Ensure that you secure the fabrics, secure the front to the back with your pins to ensure that it is well positioned. You go ahead and pick up your measuring tape, guys, and then you're going to be placing your bust circumference divided by 2. Your underbust, ensure that you take your underbust separately from the waist. Your underbust divided by 2, your waist measurement divided by 2, and then your hip measurement divided by 2. But I did some kind of manipulation around the hip area to give me that kind of flay around that point. Okay, so this is the outcome of the top. This is what it looks like. This is the finishing of the tutorial. This is the end result of our pattern drafting, and you can see how neat it's looking. The finishing is just